Hi, this is an interview with Mr. Tony Chase, a Houston based entrepreneur and philanthropist. Mr. Chase is chairman and CEO of ChaseSource, a company that has excelled in staffing, real estate, and construction services. He also founded ChaseCom and helped create Cricket Wireless, a major name in wireless communication. Mr. Chase is not just a business leader, but also a passionate supporter of education and community development. His work shows how business can make a positive impact. Read the full interview on 6degrees.blog and follow us on Instagram at 6degreesaway for more stories like this. Thank you.
And sale of Cricket Communications is remarkable. Could you walk us through the moment when you realized those companies were ready for an acquisition? What lessons from those experiences have shaped your leadership approach at ChaseSource, especially navigating growth and strategic transitions?
It was always a focus on increasing our and optimizing our operational capability as a firm, making sure that we were best of class in the industry and providing a high quality product and service. And that was really the focus and the complete commitment that we made and that I made, and we always figured if we stuck to that, good things would happen. Along the way came AT&T, recognized our operations as a good one and one that they wanted to incorporate into what they were doing, and so that's how it came about.
All right, thank you. So, minority-owned businesses often face unique challenges in scaling and gaining visibility. How did you navigate those challenges to position ChaseSource as one of the nation's largest minority-owned firms? And what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs aiming to do the same?
I guess it sounds a little counterintuitive, but I would suggest not focusing on being a minority controlled business, but rather simply being the best at what you're doing regardless. And it's interesting. I do believe minority controlled businesses typically run into a lot of challenges with respect to access to capital and related matters. But I think those wash away pretty quickly when you actually have a high functioning, high profit margin, productive, growing business.
Thank you. And ChaseSource operates in staffing and facilities management, industries that require constant adaptation to economic fluctuations. What strategies have you implemented to ensure resilience and growth during economic downturns?
That's a good question. I think economic downturns are, that smaller firms are much more vulnerable to those than larger firms. And so you have to be very conscious of economic downturns and the threats that they pose. For most smaller firms, including ChaseSource, even though we're one of the largest minority firms in the country, in the general scheme of things, we're still a smaller firm, right? And so there's certain things I think smaller firms have to be particularly careful about, and that's liquidity and cash flow, good credit, relationships with the financial community, et cetera. And we've always enjoyed that. So we've never really been put into a bind with respect to those issues. But I think the reason we haven't is more because we focus on those things a lot, all the time.
Thank you. So ChaseSource operates in like staffing and facilities management, which requires constant adaptation to economic fluctuations. So what strategies have you implemented to ensure resilience and growth during these economic downturns that we were just talking about?
Yeah, I think the thing I would point to most is staying abreast of and adopting new technology. So um, I think it's true for every business, really, every industry beyond just staffing and facilities management, but virtually every industry, it seems to me, is um, is impacted by new technology, and it's very important to take advantage of the new technology because um, most often what it does, and certainly what it's done for us, is increase our productivity and decrease our cost. Um, and that's really important because, obviously that really means more money to the bottom line. It allows you to keep your prices competitive, et cetera. So I think it's understanding and adopting new technology um, as it becomes available.
Thank you. And you've been deeply involved in community initiatives such as chairing the City of Houston COVID-19 Relief Fund. What insights did you gain about Houston's resilience during the pandemic, and how did those insights inform your approach to philanthropy?
Well, I think it's important for leaders of all types, including business leaders, to be involved in the community. And so my dad was that way. I've just always felt that way. So that's probably more the reason I've done that than anything else. Having said that, though, there's a lot to learn, right, out there when you engage with the community. And you meet lots of people who invariably, some of whom are helpful in terms of making connections for commercial reasons and business reasons too. So, so I think it's win-win.
All right, thank you. So you served on the boards of various nonprofits. How do you decide which organizations to support, and what do you see as the most effective way for business leaders to engage in community service?
Well, you're right. I mean, I have involved myself in lots of nonprofits over the years. I try to be sure to involve myself in those that I think are effective at what they do, and and that serve good causes, obviously, but all not just serve good causes, but actually are able to make a difference. Because I don't really like to waste time, so I like to be involved with nonprofits that are good, that are effective, and are able to accomplish the types of things that they have set out to accomplish. There are lots of, the nonprofit world is an interesting one. There are lots of people with good intentions and good ideas, but they're not that many that have both good intentions, good ideas, and also have the capital to implement them and the strategies to make sure that they're done effectively.
Thank you. And your academic background spans Harvard College, Harvard Law School, and Harvard Business School. How did these institutions influence your perspectives on entrepreneurship and leadership? And how do you integrate those experiences into your teaching?
I tell you, it's hard for me to overstate the role that Harvard has played in my career. It's also sort of hard to really understand it in a sense because I don't know anything else. I didn't go to any other school, either undergraduate or grad, so I can't really compare it to anything. I will say, though, that it's clear to me, particularly down in this part of the world, in the Southwest that, the name Harvard seems to mean something. And people sort of give you the benefit of the doubt. I think you still have to perform and do the things that you set out to do. You have to prove it, but I think you do get a chance often when you otherwise might not have.
So, thank you. So you're known for balancing a demanding entrepreneurship career with academia and philanthropy. What did the typical day look like for you, and how do you maintain focus and energy across different pursuits?
Well, there is no typical day, that's for sure. And I'm kind of lucky in that regard. I feel like I sort of have intellectual ADD, so I need different things to sort of keep me interested and focused. I like, you know, um, having days that are focused on any number of different types of things. So that, sort of invigorates me in a way. I think I'd get bored if I was doing the same thing all day, every day. So it kind of helps me a lot. I sort of view it as a real plus.
Thank you. And looking ahead, what are your biggest ambitions for ChaseSource, and how do you see the company's role evolving as industries embrace technological innovations like AI and automation?
Yeah, well, we've certainly embraced AI. We've got virtual recruiters now, which if you had told me that, 15 years ago, I would have I wouldn't have believed it, right? I mean, but we've got recruiters. So until a couple of years ago, every recruiter we had was a person, and now we've got several recruiters who are essentially software, right? I mean, they call people, they interview people, they have names, they don't get sick, they don't need health insurance, they don't complain. You know what I mean? And they're cheap. Um, it's really pretty amazing, actually. Again, as I referenced earlier, how important and and big of an impact technology can make. So we'll continue to develop and adopt new technology that makes sense and that's cost effective. Um, I think we have to, otherwise somebody else will and just take our place, right?
So, you've made a significant impact on Houston's business ecosystem. How has Houston as a city influenced your career, and what unique opportunities do you think the city has for up-and-coming entrepreneurs?
I've always thought Houston was one of the best cities in the world to be an entrepreneur in. And I think there are tangible reasons for that. Houston has long been home to the fossil fuel and oil and gas industry, and because of that, there's lots of capital here. But more importantly, I think there's a real appreciation for risk here that simply doesn't exist to the same degree in other places. So people in Houston, investors, people with capital, are used to, you know, putting a big amount of money behind drilling a hole in the ground that they know might be dry. And sometimes it's dry and sometimes it's not. And and they do it or not based on measured and calculated risk. I think that's what they would say. And they measure and calculate that risk based on who's drilling, what kind of equipment they're using, what the data looks like, the subsurface data and the looks like for the well, et cetera, whether there are wells in the vicinity, how much those wells produce, on and on and on. And then they make a decision of whether they want to risk their capital to develop yet one more well that they know may be dry. And that kind of risk profile is the kind that I think is very good for entrepreneurs of all types, right? Because, I think any entrepreneurial effort is one that might turn out to be a dry well. But if you, look at the various risks that are involved, including the people who are behind the idea, how well they thought about all the possibilities, both good and bad, the team that they put together to execute, the strategy, the partners that they've got in the effort, the technology that they've adopted to help them, the intellectual property, if appropriate, et cetera. I mean, and then you make a bet, if you will, hopefully a risk-adjusted bet, that you realize you may lose, but hopefully if you have considered it carefully enough and well enough, you won't. And I think that happens. People understand that calculation in Houston just about better than anywhere else, and primarily because of the oil and gas industry and the profile that it has always had. And so people, use their capital here for all sorts of ventures that benefit local entrepreneurs.
Thank you. And finally, given your deep ties to Houston, what do you see as the city's biggest challenges in the coming decade, and how can the business community play a role in addressing them?
Good question. I do think Houston has tremendous challenges in the next several years. Climate change is one. We're near the coast, and it seems to me, it seems that climate change is real. Two, it seems to me that any coastal communities are in greater jeopardy than ones that are not. It also seems to me that the storms that we encounter are becoming ever more fierce. And so I think that's a big challenge for Houston to figure out. Having said that, I mean, I think Houston's got some underlying structural advantages. It's in Texas, and Texas has a very favorable tax structure. And so I think, and Texas has a very favorable cost of living relative to a number of places like California, East Coast, West Coast, et cetera. Texas also has good universities. And so my sense is that Texas has some built-in advantages too. And Houston, of course, is the leading city in Texas. And so my sense is that Houston's got a pretty good shot going forward of maintaining a strong position as one of the leading cities in the United States, if not the world. And that really shouldn't change certainly not in your lifetime.